College towns have their own rhythms, and the small town of Elmsfield was no exception. When students flooded its streets, cafes buzzed with chatter, late-night laughter echoed off walls, and the whole town pulsed with youthful energy. But the students of Elmsfield University had returned this semester with a shadow of apprehension. Everyone had heard of the Elmsfield Strangler, a serial killer who had been terrorizing neighboring towns but had never been caught. It seemed he had a preference, young adults, especially students. The town was on high alert. Campus police increased their rounds, self-defense classes were packed, and students moved in groups. Among the many who returned were 4 close-knit friends: Jake, Leah, Ben and Mia. Having known each other since freshman year, they shared a house off campus. One evening, as they sat around the living room, Leah mentioned a man she'd noticed following her on multiple occasions. "He's always there in the distance watching. I thought it was a coincidence, but today he followed me from the library to our home," she whispered, her voice shaking. The group exchanged worried glances. Ben spoke up. "You should have told us sooner. We should report this." They did, but without a clear description or evidence, the campus police could do little. From then on, the group adopted a buddy system, but it soon became clear that the mysterious man wasn't just stalking Leah. Mia saw him at the coffee shop, watching her from the street. Jake noticed the same man, hooded and always in shadow, while he was at the gym. Even Ben, the most skeptical of the group, admitted he'd seen him lurking near their house. The terror among them grew when one night Jake received a torn page in his mailbox. On it was a faded photograph of a younger version of the man with a woman and a child. Written on the back were the words, "Do you know me?" The quartet decided to take matters into their own hands. Ben hatched a plan to catch the man in the act. They would use Leah as bait, given she was his first target. The idea was simple. Leah would walk home from the library alone, and the rest would follow discreetly, ready to confront the man. The night was cold, with a fog that reduced visibility. As Leah walked, she could hear the distant footsteps echoing her own. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Suddenly she heard a quick shuffle behind her. She dared a glance back and saw the silhouette of the man emerging from the fog. Panicking, Leah started to run, but she was grabbed from behind. As she screamed, Jake, Mia and Ben rushed forward. The confrontation was swift. Jake and Ben pinned the man down, ready to unmask their tormentor. But what they saw left them in shock. The man was older, with tears in his eyes. Gasping for breath, he uttered, "Jake, I'm your father." Jake stared, disbelief apparent in his eyes. "My father died when I was a kid." The man pulled out a small, faded photo from his pocket, the same as the one they'd received earlier, but intact. "I had to go into hiding. The world outside believed I was dead, but I've been trying to get close to you for years." As the truth unraveled, Jake learned of a complex mesh of criminal pursuits and false identities. His father, though not the Elmsfield Strangler, had enemies of his own, which had forced him into hiding. The relief among the friends was palpable but mixed with complex emotions. While the direct threat to them had been a misunderstanding, the real serial killer still lurked out there. The town remained under its shadow, and the quartet, though scarred, learned the age-old lesson that things aren't always what they seem. The fear of the unknown can sometimes overshadow the truths hiding in plain sight. It was the allure of adventure and the need for a fresh escape that drove Sarah and her friends Kyle and Amanda into the heart of Redwood Forest. The idea was simple: a 2-day hike, some campfire stories, and memories to last a lifetime. But the forest, with its sprawling trees and the whisper of nature, hid secrets in its vast expanse. The first day was nothing short of perfect. The trio trekked through marked paths, laughing at old college tales, reminiscing about their shared past, and planning their shared futures. As evening approached, they set up camp in a small clearing. The sounds of crickets and the crackling fire filled the silence of the darkening woods. Amanda, the storyteller of the group, began with tales of the forest's legends. "Have you heard about the Forest Watcher?" she began with a mischievous grin. Kyle shook his head, eyes wide with anticipation, while Sarah smirked, ready to call any bluff. "They say a man used to live deep within these woods, a recluse. Rumor has it he'd been wronged by the city folk and sought solace in the wilderness. Over time, he became one with the woods, forgetting any human interaction, surviving through hunting and becoming increasingly territorial. Amanda's voice dipped low, mirroring the hushed tones of the woods. Kyle chuckled nervously. Just tales to scare off kids or amateur hikers, right? A sudden rustling in the nearby bushes silenced him. They strained their ears, trying to discern if it was just the wind or an animal passing by. But it seemed to grow closer, circling their camp. The fire's shadow cast eerie patterns, making the trees seem like they were closing in. Sarah, ever the brave one, stood up with a torch. "Who's there?" she called out. No answer, just the eerie silence broken intermittently by the distant hoot of an owl. Wanting to assure themselves, the trio decided to take a look around. Maybe it was just a curious animal, or perhaps another group of campers trying to have some fun at their expense. But the deeper they went into the woods, the more they felt a presence watching them. Every crack of a twig underfoot, every echo of their whispers seemed to be mimicked from the shadows. It was Kyle who first saw it. "There, between those trees," he pointed with a trembling finger. Two shining eyes stared back, unblinking. Panicking, the group decided to head back to their campsite, but the once familiar paths seemed distorted, and in their haste, they lost their way. The looming trees and thick underbrush made it impossible to tell one direction from another. All the while, the feeling of being watched persisted. Hours seemed to pass. Just when despair and exhaustion threatened to overcome them, a light flickered in the distance, their campsite. With renewed energy, they raced toward it, but something was off. Their tents had been rummaged through, and in the fire's dying glow, footprints surrounded their sight, too many to belong to just the three of them. Among the scattered belongings, Sarah found a carved wooden figure, crudely shaped like a human, with two holes where the eyes should be. Suddenly, from the edge of the clearing, a rugged man emerged. His clothes were tattered and his beard long, with wild eyes that darted between the three friends. "You're in my territory," he rasped. A standoff ensued. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Sarah, thinking on her feet, held up the wooden figure. "Is this yours?" she asked, her voice quivering. The man nodded, stepping closer but with less menace now. "It's a ward. Keeps the real dangers of the forest away." Understanding dawned on the trio. This was the so-called Forest Watcher. But he wasn't the mythical creature from the tales, he was real. A man, lost to time and society, protecting his domain. Seeing their genuine fear and realizing they meant no harm, the Watcher pointed them to the path leading out of the forest. The trio didn't need any more urging. They packed up and left as dawn painted the sky, the haunting eyes of the forest and its Watcher forever imprinted in their memories. The redwood forest was still an adventurer's dream, but every dream has its shadows. And in this vast green maze, it was not the mythical that haunted one's steps, but the very real hermit gaze of a man lost to legend.